Hey love, what's up? Welcome to Confidently Uncomfortable. I'm your host J.Go, health and lifestyle coach and not so regal confidence queen. Coming at you with the real, the raw, and of course, the uncomfortable. My mission is to show you that to be confident, it has absolutely nothing to do with being perfect or having it all together, and everything to do with you getting uncomfortable and pushing your limits. Thanks for joining me. Let's dive in. Hey love. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I did not think I would be sharing on a podcast episode. But I went through an entire reflection this morning and was processing some things. And I'm like, I want to share this with you. So, fuck it. I am. I am very excited about just being super vulnerable, talking through kind of things I've dealt with, and I do think it's appropriate with the time of year. So I'm recording this 2 weeks before Christmas, holiday season. If you celebrate any and everything, it can be stressful, right? One thing that's helping me right now is, y'all, I'm recording this episode right now and I just rescued a pup named Kima. She's the cutest little husky. She really reminds me of Fiona, but has her own personality. She's super sassy and really talkative. And this is the first time I've recorded a podcast episode since getting her. And y'all know I have a closet that I record in, and she's literally curled up next to me in the closet. So she's such a blessing. So speaking of having a stressful time of year, having a dog, having something with your self-care has been huge. And she's been a huge part of just helping me heal, honestly. If you haven't listened to those self-care episodes, definitely go back and listen to it. But I do think that this episode is really important as an addendum to self-care, to reconnecting with yourself. Is a lot of times in self-development, when people talk about it, they stop with themselves. It's like they'll talk about all the things you need to do for yourself and how you're supposed to be unapologetically you and how you're just supposed to focus on you and your number one priority. And I believe that, y'all. I preach that. But you also have to know that in reality, there's more than just you in the world. So it is important to recognize some things about ourselves and don't always just blame another person and think that that's easier. So I'm going to be sharing about how even if you can get to a level of awareness, hey sweet girl, it doesn't mean you're immune from being judgmental, from projecting our emotions, from blaming others. And I've talked about that inner mean girl. And, I've gotten to the point personally where I don't judge other women for their bodies. If I see someone like wearing another like crazy bikini showing off their ass, I'm like, hell yeah, you do you, girl. Like I want to hype people up, and that's huge. But, it gets really easy to do that with the physical, but what about the other aspects of people's skill set and growth? And something that I learned about myself is sometimes when I see other people doing certain things well, I can go straight into a level of judgment, and it's either judging them or judging myself or both. And I'll give you guys an example of this morning. I actually was texting my husband Tom about this, and basically, y'all, I think if you heard in the last couple episodes, holidays can be kind of hard for me, and my self-love language is words of affirmation. It is physical touch. It is not gifts. Gifts are just not my thing. I don't really care about receiving them. I don't really love giving them. It kind of stresses me the hell out. It just feels very forced sometimes. And I was having this conversation with my husband. I'm being super vulnerable right now, but I was having this conversation with my husband about just the whole concept of giving gifts. And I was getting frustrated because I'm like, I haven't done anything. And he's like, well, I kind of wish you would kind of taken the reins on getting these gifts for our family members. And I'm like, well, that's not really my expertise. I don't know what I would get anyone. I feel all this weird pressure. What if they don't like it? I honestly don't like getting things that I'm not going to use. So I don't want to give someone else something that they're not going to use. And it's like, I go into this long ass rant about how like, well, I'm not good at giving gifts like your mom. And my sister-in-law is freaking amazing. Y'all, I love her. You know, I love her. And if she's listening to this, girl, you know, I love you. But her ability to give gifts is like bar none. Like she's so amazing at just being in tune with like what other people might need, giving people a gift. And I love giving people things, but I don't like when it's surrounded by a holiday. Like I will do things for people like my friends, my family, when it's a random Tuesday. And that's just because I work better with like my intuition. And when I want to feel like someone needs something, needs some kind words, needs a kind gift, usually my gift is not really a thing, but it might be like a, what is the word I'm looking for? An actual experience that I'm doing with them or something like that. But I struggle when it comes to the pressure of like, okay, it's a holiday or it's someone's birthday or it's this thing or that thing. And I was realizing in my rant, actually, no, not true. During my rant, I thought I was right. I'm like on my high horse, like gifts are stupid and we shouldn't be doing this. And why does it always have to be such pressure? And like, this is so dumb. And like, I feel like this is just putting more pressure on us and blah, blah, blah. And later on, I was starting my morning routine. So Tom had left for work and I started to just kind of journal about how I was feeling. I started to just kind of write about like, why am I feeling this way? What's really going on? And I actually texted Tom, my husband, and was like, I'm recognizing that I'm projecting, like my judgment is a projection of my own wounds. I am feeling inadequate. I'm not feeling like a good wife because I didn't step into the role of like, you know how the mom or the wife is most commonly like the one that's getting all the gifts and playing Santa and checking the list and shopping. I hate shopping, y'all. I hate it. I don't like it. I love, you know, spending time with people. I don't love getting gifts for people. It's just not my thing. And I was just feeling so small. I was feeling so inadequate. I was feeling so like I wasn't doing my job as a wife. I wasn't doing my job as a sister-in-law, as a daughter-in-law, because I wasn't, you know, prioritizing gift giving. And I was feeling like, well, I'm not going to give a good gift. I've given gifts in the past that weren't, you know, the best gift. I saw that they weren't used or no one really wanted them. And I'm like, oh, why try? You know, when you feel like you're not good at something, you ever think, why try? That's kind of where my head was at. And I was journaling about this and I was explaining kind of to my husband, like, this is how I'm feeling. And he's, you know, God, he's the best. He's just like, I'm glad you're recognizing that in yourself and basically like, hey, let's put our heads together. We'll figure something out. And then maybe we can discuss some boundaries down the road of like that we're will or won't do gifts or whatever. And, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not going to do gifts ever after this, but it really felt good to have him say that because it made me feel very seen. And so if you have a partner, to be able to communicate that is huge. But I also think it's important to first journal and feel seen through yourself. So even if it's not the prettiest picture. So what I mean by that is that inner mean girl, she's a judgmental bitch sometimes. I'm not necessarily judging people based on looks, based on this. I'm pretty non-judgmental. But when it comes to me being triggered, ooh, I start to want to just get defensive. I put these walls up. And so remember, I've done an episode in the past about walls versus boundaries. For a long time, and even to this day, I will sometimes trick my brain and tell myself that what I'm creating is a boundary when really it's a wall. Really, I don't want to be, you know, seen as not enough. I don't want to be seen as not a good wife. I don't want to be seen as someone who didn't give a good gift or whatever. And so instead of wanting to feel that, I project it, you know, and I know I'm not alone in this. That's why I decided to do a podcast on it. And the biggest takeaway I noticed while I was journaling is that judgment is a projection of our own wounds. I did an episode on judging others when I was talking about J.Lo and the halftime show. You can go listen to that episode, but it's so true, especially as women, we can really bring other people down or immediately go to a place of judgment. But what happens is you're triggered, right? So some part of you is triggered and immediately you're like, oh, I don't like how that makes me feel. And then we decide to project our pain. So we're feeling a certain way and we project a pain on that person. Like, how dare they make me feel that way? And then another part of us starts to judge ourselves. So it's kind of like a double judgment where we're judging someone else and then we recognize, oh crap, I'm judging someone. So then we're judging ourselves for judging someone. And then it leads us to be like, oh, how could that person make me judge someone? Like, how could that happen? I hate that this is happening. Or you find someone else to judge because of it. Like, I can't believe that my mom made me feel this way when I was younger and now I'm judging other people because she always did this or something. That's not my mom, but it's an example. So I was having this epiphany and recognizing that I'm being triggered, and I'm reading this book by Gabby Bernstein called Judgment Detox. And, she talks about something called the judgment cycle. And it's essentially what I just went through of you're triggered by something that makes you feel less than, something that makes you feel heightened emotion, whatever it is, you're triggered. And then your immediate response is to judge that person for doing that triggering. And then your next response is to judge yourself for judging that person because you feel guilty. And then you just continue on that loop by turning into more judgment. And it's this cycle that we can't get out of. And a lot of times what'll happen, and this is why I care so much about self-love and lifting yourself up, is like, we as women, what we'll just stick with is like, okay, I'm just going to blame it on myself. So I'm just going to self-blame, and they'll stop there. So they'll stop with just judging themselves. They're like, oh, you're a terrible person, right? When in reality, what you need to do is, yes, recognize that judgment, but also release it. Okay. And so how can you do that? How can you go through this process so that you're fully healing instead of just constantly triggered? Because I don't know about y'all, but like the holidays, can be very triggering. I already talked about things that can come up for you and why it's so important to prioritize your self-care and prioritize your boundaries and your needs. But like, don't stop there, because we want to heal. We want to get to the root of this. We want to get to the idea of like, well, why am I getting so upset by, my family member saying something, or by, my husband doing this, or my partner doing this, or by my, like with me, but why am I so triggered by just the idea of giving gifts and having to give gifts? And so how can you do this? How can you really go through the process? You got to feel it, babe. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. Not sometimes, most times when you're going through healing, there's a lot of ugly parts of us. And that's like the shadow work. That's the behind the scenes. That's the tough stuff that when you're going on a healing journey, it goes beyond just the self-love and lifting yourself up and you're amazing. And you are, listen, you are amazing, but you're so amazing and you're so willing to grow and wanting to continue to level up in your life that you don't want to stop there, right? We want to learn about the hard parts about ourselves too. We want to learn about maybe things that we hide from ourselves or things that we try and project onto others that really we're feeling, those shadow parts of ourselves. I'm not going to say they're bad because they're in all of us. They're one and the same, They're just the counterpart to all of the good inside of us. And it's important to recognize it. So then guess what? You're going to be able to help see that in other people. And it's going to give you a deeper level of empathy. It's going to help you grow within yourself. And so I know you don't want to stop with just the affirmations, the lifting ourselves up. So what can you do when you're feeling this triggering, when you're feeling like you want to immediately judge someone or blame someone else for your emotions? So what do you do first? Well, definitely journaling. I'm a huge fan of journaling. If, like I've talked about in the past, if you're not huge about writing things down, you can put it in a voice memo. I don't recommend when you're first processing this to just immediately call your friend or call your mom or call, your go-to person. Because a lot of times when we're calling that person, our go-to person is sometimes someone that we just want to be a yes man. We want them to like tell us you're in the right. Like, oh yeah, you should be judging them. I'm actually going to judge them with you, right? That's your like ride or die person. They're like, oh, we don't like them, right? And I don't want that to be the case. So take some time with yourself first before you go back into it, whether it's journaling or speaking into a voice memo, just expressing, how did this make me feel, right? And for me, with the present example, the gift giving, it made me feel like I wasn't doing enough, like I wasn't showing up, like I was dropping the ball on this big expectation of like who I should be as a wife, as a partner, as this family member. And it did not make me feel good, right? And then the immediately feeling of like judging, like, okay, well, this judgment came up too. So I was triggered by that. And then my immediate projection was, why do we have to do presents? Like, my family doesn't really do presents. So I immediately go into like, this is stupid. Like, I don't want to have to do this. Like, this just feels all this pressure. And the next question I want you to ask yourself is like, why do you feel justified in making these judgments, right? Why do you feel like your point of view is valid? And it's not something where you have to be mean to yourself. So I don't want you to be immediately like, I just said something that's pretty vulnerable, right? That sounds like, J.Go, you're a bitch. Like, you're a terrible person. People literally want to give you gifts and you're being a bitch about it. Y'all, I get that, but I'm not going to judge myself for it. So before you skip to the next level of judgment and get stuck in that cycle again, hold the phone, slow down, and what I want you to do is release the shame and guilt associated with those judgmental thoughts, because I don't want you to go right into judging yourself, because that's not the solution. I think a lot of times we've been taught that like, if we have a bad thought, we need to like shame ourselves. Or if we say something mean or we're feeling judgmental, we need to immediately just feel guilty about it and feel bad and just be like, you're a bad person. How dare you think that? And that's not actually going to help us heal from those thoughts and break down and get to the root of why we're feeling that way. So before you jump down your throat for having these thoughts, slow down and release that shame and guilt over the judgment and just recognize, hey, this is a thought. It doesn't define who I am as a person. Okay, so I'm not a bad person because I've had this thought. There's something deeper, and we need to get down to what that is. So by releasing that shame and guilt over the judgmental thoughts that you've had, you're allowing space to heal. Okay, we're creating that space within ourselves instead of trying to bottle it up, instead of trying to push it back down and point the fingers back at us. Okay, we're still playing a part in that. Obviously, I'm not saying that we're blameless, but I am saying that we cannot heal from it if we just go straight to punishment and punishing ourselves, which I think is a lot of our go-to, is to just punish ourselves for things, right? I don't want that to be the case. So let's dig deeper. That's going to be the next step. So dig deeper. So you asked yourself, you wrote about how it made you feel. You wrote about why you felt justified in these judgments. So why they came up, why you felt justified. And then you took a second to release any kind of self-judgment so that you weren't going straight to judging yourself, and you allowed space to dig deeper. And so ask yourself, when maybe my younger self, it doesn't have to be your childhood self, but a lot of times it is, but when did you first feel your younger self experience and be triggered by this type of judgment? So for me, feeling that trigger of, you're not good enough, you're not doing enough, you're not a good wife, you're not showing up enough. And that goes back to my younger self. I struggled to feel like I was enough. I struggled to feel like I was doing enough. I often compared my family to what other families did. And so what happens is I think about maybe how my family's different, and we're separated. There's divorce. I freaking love my family. But when you think of like the picture perfect Christmas picture, my family ain't it. And that's okay. But there's still a younger inner child part of me that feels broken from that. And so when I see it happening on the other end and me feeling like, see, you're just the missing piece, you're the broken person that can't make this a really good holiday because you're not showing up enough, you're not buying the gifts, you're not making this a perfect holiday, and see, you're the reason that you're going to create a broken family in the future. Whew. Y'all, it's been a crazy morning because all this came out of a journaling session. And how crazy that all came from me being angry and not wanting to buy gifts. So if you look at the surface level of someone else's judgments, you will never get to the digging deeper of what's really going on behind the scene. And so having this level of releasing that guilt and being okay with like, hey, I'm just going to let myself feel these feelings and dig a little deeper, that allowed me to create space and recognize, wow, you know what? Behind every mean girl thought is a wounded inner child. Let me repeat that again. Behind every mean girl thought we have, there's an inner wounded child who within you is crying out for help, wants some sort of love, wants some sort of compassion, wants some sort of assurance, was hurt in the past, needs to be healed. But if we continue to just shame ourselves, blame ourselves, and put ourselves down for our thoughts and our judgments, we're never going to heal that inner child. We're never going to be able to really reconnect with her. And so I talked about reconnecting with our body, and y'all know it goes beyond the body. I want you to reconnect with your soul and that part of you that's always been there. And so if she's hurting in some way, I want you to figure that out. Therapy, big fan. Having a coach, big fan. Having, conversations with your partner, big fan. Having conversations with yourself, let's go. Those are things that we can start doing more of, right? And so allow yourself space for that, break up with that negative thought pattern, and you will grow so much more. That's hard for me, y'all, because it's easier to just, blame other people, to project our pain. It's easier to just project our pain and then feel bad about it and then just be negative towards ourselves. It's easier not to feel. But the truth is, if you don't feel, you're not going to heal. Okay? And self-love doesn't end with you. Self-care, all of these things, it doesn't end with you. So it is really good to understand the relationships you're having with other people, the conversations that get brought up. When you are triggered, instead of saying, oh, I'm triggered, and like immediately not wanting to have this conversation, not like wanting to leave the room. I had a point in my healing journey where that's what I needed at that point. I needed to just walk away. So if you're in that space where like you right now, you have a lot of other growing to do and you cannot take that on right now, it's fine. But I'm on the other end of the other end of the tunnel. I'm getting closer there and I'm recognizing, hey, I need to face this head on and it's going to hurt like a bitch. And it's going to really be hard. And I'm going to have to face some of these things that I have been hiding from for a long time. I'm going to have to recognize some of these little boundaries that I've set up might actually have been walls. And I'm ready to break those walls down so I can have a deeper connection with myself, so I can heal that inner child. And guess what? When you're doing those things, you are going to have such a deep connection with other people, especially the people that matter. Me and my husband have an amazing connection, y'all. But we have also been together for over a decade, 14 years almost. Pretty long time for being less than 30. And we have had to learn again and again how to communicate. We have had to learn that a lot of times the things that we're saying are projections of our inner child and our wounded self. And we really need to dig deeper between that. Don't take things as personally. Recognize that, hey, this person's projecting some things that are going on. Let's talk about it. Let's dig a little deeper. But if we jump to judgment and judge the other person for saying something, or we judge ourselves, we're not allowing space to heal. Okay, so that's something that I came to a little bit of an epiphany and growth today. And I hope that it helps you wherever you're at on your journey. And recognize that if you're not at that point yet, it's okay. You're still allowed to step away from that space if you need to heal yourself first, okay? So let's kind of review so that you feel like you have some good takeaways. So you can learn a lot from these judgments by releasing and accepting, hey, this is where I'm at right now. It's okay. And when you do recognize this, I want you to ask yourself, like, does this need to be a conversation with myself or with others? So I do believe that initially, like I said, step one is journal. So how did it make me feel? Let's start there. So start with the self-reflection. Ask yourself, this triggering, how did this make me feel? What judgment came from it? And then why did I feel justified in these judgments? And then release any shame and guilt before you go back into blaming yourself. And then finally, once you've created that space, dig deeper. So ask yourself, was there a time in the past, did my younger self ever experience, feeling triggered by this judgment? And if anything comes up for you, first of all, write about it. Then give yourself some, a little hug and tell yourself, you know what, that makes sense why I felt that way. And that says a lot about me and not as much about them. So I'm going to release the judgment from them towards them, but I'm also going to release that judgment towards myself because, hey, I get why I'm feeling this way. And what do we do next? Is there anything you can do that's going to help heal that part of yourself? Now, this is the step where it might be communicating those feelings to that person. It might be just recognizing that in yourself and then ask yourself, you know what, this might not be really a truth. It might just be a story that I've been telling myself that I'm not worthy if I don't meet these expectations or if I miss the mark, when really my worthiness is not attachment to those actions. Like I'm still worthy regardless of whether or not I feel like I missed the mark on that. So whatever's coming up for you, remind yourself that those feelings of feeling like you're not enough or whatever kind of things are coming up, that is not a truth. That is not a narrative of yourself. You know that really you have done so many things for other people. So start to shift, like when were there times where I did give a good gift, or I did do something nice for someone, or just trying to give yourself examples to myth bust that thought that's coming up for you. Because if you become the myth buster, then you're no longer seeing that as your reality or your narrative. You're breaking that narrative for yourself. If you cannot think of a previous thing where that's happened, then prove to yourself going forward, what can I do going forward that is going to, break up with this narrative and help me create a new story, knowing that, hey, this doesn't define who I am. Whether or not you have that conversation with someone, it's really important to have that with yourself. And then when you feel ready, if you want to have that conversation with someone else, that's awesome. But I just want you to feel so just proud of yourself for taking this next step, okay? So you're doing so much in your journey. You're working really hard. You've been listening maybe to these episodes for a while. Maybe you have worked with me in the past. Maybe you haven't worked with me. And you know that like going into 2022, it's going to be your year. And I think a lot of times when we get really excited about like our next step and what we're going to accomplish, it's super exciting and we're thinking about the motivational side of things and all the amazing things we're going to accomplish, but also recognize there's going to be a lot of growth. It's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. I think a lot of times we try to hide ourselves from the difficulties that are going to come up with our growth and with our success. And I don't want you to hide from them, but I also don't want that fear of the unknown to hold you back from going deeper, from growing more, from taking that next step, from leveling up, from doing the thing that scares you. So take some time to journal on this, recognize if anything's coming up for you as far as judgment, and then also know that like, hey, it's okay if these things are coming up, but most likely it just means that like there's something in me that needs to heal. I'm really looking forward to the next episode where we'll be talking about, 2022 goal setting. I'll be doing some exciting things, something free for you guys coming forward. So just be on the lookout. If you're not on my email list, make sure you get on my email list so that you can be a part of that whole conversation, because it's going to be really, really good going into the new year. I know so many people that start the new year with these goals, and I want you to level up in a way that you maybe didn't even think is possible. So get excited, get ready for this. If this episode helped you in any way, I would love to hear from you. I know I'm not alone in this, so that's why I'm getting vulnerable and sharing this. Whatever you're doing for the holidays, remember that judgment's not going to help anyone any way you point it, okay? So if you start to scroll on social media and start to judge other people for sharing this or having a matching pajama photo, that might be me. I really want to get matching pajamas. Don't judge them, and just recognize that, hey, like what they're doing doesn't impact who I am and what I'm doing. So instead of feeling judgment towards others, tell people, you know what, you do you. Whether you want to just release any positive or negative vibes towards someone and just let them live their life so that you can allow space to live yours. Because a lot of times the people that are so judgmental, those are the ones that are judging themselves the hardest. And I talked about that in a previous podcast too, about judgment. And so it's a really good reality to come to, because when you recognize that, it keeps you from holding yourself back, because you realize, you know what, anyone that's going to judge me, they're having a harder time themselves, so I'm not going to let that keep me from living the life the way that I know I'm supposed to do it. So I hope this helped inspire you in a positive way today. I don't want you to feel bad. I want you to feel lifted up, inspired, and maybe ready to have a conversation with someone that you didn't think you were going to, whether that conversation is with yourself or with another person. But thank you guys for being a part of this conversation today. It really means a lot that you're joining me in the closet with me and Kima as we, really dissect my life. So I appreciate you letting me be vulnerable, letting me be real, raw, open, honest, as I promised to you guys that I would be. It's going to only get more crazy going into year 2022. I'm not holding back, y'all. So just get ready. Be open to this. We're getting confidently uncomfortable. Thanks, y'all. See you next time. Thanks again for listening to Confidently Uncomfortable. I love being able to connect with you here and honestly don't want it to end. So head over to my Facebook group, Body Confident Blueprint, and be sure to follow me on Insta at J.Go Fit Life. Also, if you're ready to get real confidently uncomfortable, go leave this podcast a 5-star review and email me the review screenshot, support@jgofit360.com, for a chance to win a free 30-minute fitness audit and goal setting session. I appreciate your support. See you next time.